And with that, we will turn to the brilliant Kate Harris, who will tell us all about the LGB Alliance. And then Kate and I will have a little chat about whatever Kate wants to chat about. So take it away, Kate.
Even though it seems quite impossible to me, it is possible that some of you don't know what LGB Alliance is. So I'm going to tell you. Um, it is an organization that was started by two lesbians, Bev Jackson and me, in 2019. As Cara said in the introduction, I was heavily involved with Stonewall, which is Europe's largest, used to be, gay rights organization. And I did an awful lot of work to encourage lesbians to get involved in Stonewall. It was, like many gay organizations, dominated by men who had more money, more resources, more confidence, more everything. But I was really very keen for lesbians to start standing up for our rights and being heard. When Stonewall decided to completely switch from promotion of gay rights to promoting gender identity ideology in 2015, I began to write to the chief executive at the time, who was Ruth Hunt. And then when she left, to the chair of the Board of Trustees, Jan Gooding, simply asking for dialogue. There is something going wrong here. You are denying reality. You are telling lies. This is dangerous. We must have an acceptance that there are different opinions, that free speech is the fundamental foundation of a free society. And at that time, Stonewall's key rule was no debate. So I spent 3 years, along with other former trustees of Stonewall, talking to Stonewall to try to get a dialogue going. We hosted a petition, 10,000 signatures asking Stonewall to talk. We wrote letters to the Times. In the end, it became obvious that nothing was going to change. And I kept waiting for somebody else to do something, but they didn't. So I was introduced to Bev Jackson fortuitously. I had been working previously with former trustees and other interested parties, but nobody really was pushing this forward. So over a period of 6 months, we phoned everybody we could think of who might be interested in this. We knew to be successful, we needed to do something that was for gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and we modeled ourselves on Stonewall as it was when it was a gay rights organization. And the rest is pretty much history. Alison Bailey, if any of you haven't heard of her, please Google her. She's a barrister who's still involved in legal proceedings against Stonewall herself. And she tweeted on the night of our first meeting, at which we were going to plan what to do. She tweeted, "Watch out, world, LGB Alliance is here." And all hell broke loose. And we weren't ready for anything. We hadn't said a word in public. We hadn't issued a press statement. We hadn't finalized our mission statement. The meeting that we'd had with 70 invitees, Sheila was there, various other people on the call, I'm sure, were there. At that meeting, we were really just talking about, okay, what should we do? Who's going to run this? Who's going to write the mission statement? What are we going to do? One thing we did do at that meeting, because we decided we were about actions, not words, one thing we did do at that meeting was we wrote a letter to the Equality and Human Rights Commission in the UK. I might come back to that later. I don't want to spend too much time on it now, but suffice to say, we're still waiting for their full response 5 years later, because what we've requested is a formal inquiry under section, I think it's section 16 of the Equality Act, into Stonewall and the way that they have corrupted every level of British society and institutions such as the BBC, the police, etc. So that is still going, and I'm happy to talk about that later on. Anyway, at that meeting, it was preparatory. it wasn't a formal launch, but suddenly we were swamped. We did have a Twitter account, and we had about 50-50, I think, messages telling us that we were hateful bigots who deserved to die, or thank goodness somebody's doing something at last. One of the most damaging things was that a revolting person whose name escapes me momentarily, I'm sure it'll come back to me, a man who had a large following of activists, tweeted something along the lines of LGB Alliance is a hate group, pass it on. This was before we had said anything. So that went viral, and that has damaged us from that day until now. LGB Alliance is a hate group. So that happened, but also we were overwhelmed by people who thanked us, and this was global, wanted to say thank you from every continent. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. Anyway, nobody picked it up. So Bev and I continued from that day on, and 2 years, it was absolute hell every single day, 24/7, wondering what on earth was going to happen next, who was going to do what should we say, what is our response, who are we going to, and of course, lots and lots of criticism came from our own side. People are very suspicious, very sensitive. We all are, because we're going through such a hideous time. And we found the attacks from people on our own side harder to bear. And we just had to say, please judge us by our actions. We cannot perform miracles overnight. You know, this has come from nothing. We have no money, we have no structure, we have nothing. So give us a break, give us time to breathe. And eventually, I think we were quite right. Our first campaign was against self-ID in Scotland. We were the only organisation that stood up and said, we're against this legislation to reform the gender recognition bill in Scotland. I was very clever. I'm going to blow my own trumpet here. I was the only person who said, actually, don't worry, this will never get through. And we will ensure it does not get through. And we did ensure it didn't get through, along with the women who wouldn't wished. I mean, the women who wouldn't wished are all the women in Scotland and around the world who adopted that. We will not accept this. And we fought and fought and fought. And I'm delighted to say that the history of what happened in Scotland is very well known to all of us. And farewell, Nicola Sturgeon. Off you go with Val McDermott, but leave us alone and leave children alone. So that's a brief intro for anybody who doesn't really know what we were about. We realized very quickly we had to become a registered company, an official registered charity, and that's what we did. So it's a very different organization now. It exists. We have 3 full-time members of staff. We have Kate Barker, we have Kerry Mullin, we have Stephen Young, we have a board of trustees, we have a wonderful chair, Eileen Gallagher, OBE. I'd be amazed if there weren't a number of fans watching this, fans of a program called Bad Girls. One of my favorite programs of all time. Eileen is responsible for that. I'm sure that's why she got her OBE. Anyway, that's an aside. But what I want to do is to talk to you about what LGB Alliance has been doing in the last year, and also what is planned for 2025. What I must emphasize is that this is the work, particularly of our Chief Executive, Kate Barker, day to day with the team, with Kerry and Stephen, and with a huge group of volunteers. We would be nothing without our supporters and volunteers. So after self-ID, the second campaign that we took on was to ban puberty blockers. I remember very early on, we had a session, sort of, what do they call it? Brainstorming, blue skying. What are your dreams? Put up here, what is your number one dream? We said, close the Tavistock clinic and ban puberty blockers. Done. So, I mean, the fact that there are other gender identity clinics around the country is a worry. The fact that there are former clinicians from the Tavistock staffing some of these clinics is a worry. The fact that there is a bloke called Dr. Michael Brady, who's the LGBT representative in the NHS, is a worry. So there's plenty of work to do. We know the NHS is still deeply, deeply flawed with gender identity ideology. However, banning puberty blockers in the UK and the Cass review has had a global impact, and that is huge. We were directly involved, Kate Barker and Eileen Gallagher were directly involved in influencing the Minister Victoria Atkins in the last days of the Tory government to ensure that she snuck through in the dying days of the last government ban on private prescription of puberty blockers. So thank you to Victoria Atkins for that. As far as Wes Streeting is concerned, of course, we're delighted that he's banned NHS prescriptions for under 18s. We are lobbying him on the puberty blocker trial, which clearly is insane, utterly insane. Have a look at the letter. If you don't follow LGBT Alliance on X, I encourage you to. That's where the team posts our important news items, and you can see the letter that was written recently to explain to Wes why the puberty blocker trial must not go ahead. We have 9,000 children already who've been through the Tavistock, the gender identity services. Where are their records? That is what we should be looking at, not putting new children on medication that Hilary Cass has said very clearly has no evidential basis for its usage at all. One of the key points for us about puberty blockers is that this is transing away the gay. If there is anybody on this call who is not aware of this, please, again, go to our X feed and look at the post from 2 days ago, I think. Jamie Reid Jamie Reid is an absolutely brilliant woman in the way that she articulates what's happened. And if you watch her giving evidence in Wisconsin a few days ago, where she describes the first cohort of children who were in what's become known as the Dutch Protocol. And I'm actually not going to tell you what Jamie says. Go and read it. Go and listen to her. Because fundamentally, this is an experiment on gay and lesbian kids. It is utterly reprehensible. It always has been utterly reprehensible. We will not allow it to continue. We will not allow this disgraceful homophobia to continue, and to very vulnerable children, most at risk. We're also campaigning, obviously, supporting Keira Bell with her campaign to ban cross-sex hormone prescriptions and surgery on the NHS. I mean, utterly indefensible. Secondly, so that's a big campaign for us that will continue. We will not take our focus off this, because we know that had it been us, I would have done it, definitely, you know, and we're not going to allow this horror to continue. So slightly lighter, we have friends groups. Mrs. Grumpy, i.e. me, thought, what's this friends groups nonsense? Well, actually, it turns out to have been a brilliant idea. Kate Barker's, I think. We've got 36 Friends of LGBT Alliance groups running from the Isle of Skye to Cornwall. And one of the features that we are encouraging is for there to be more of these, and also for us to hold more of what has been named Big Nights Out. The next Big Night Out is Saturday, the 12th of April, and it's in Glasgow. Please go. If you're interested in the Friends group, have a look on LGBT Alliance website. It's just a way, do you know, you remember when you sort of first heard about gender identity ideology and you thought, hang on a minute, am I the only mad one, or am I the only sane one? Go to a friends group and you'll find other people who are also sane, which is needed. Thirdly, we get involved, obviously, in legal challenges. We were all in court thanks to Mermaids and the delightful Jolyon Maugham, also Stonewall, although they pulled out at an early stage. But we had to stand up in court, as you may remember, and explain to the judges that lesbians don't have penises. We also had to stand up for our right to exist as a charity, which was what the case was about. They did not want to have a gay rights charity exist in the 21st century in the United Kingdom. That was the goal. It is still the goal. We are still under attack every day. And please, if you think, well, LGBT Alliance, I don't know, I'm not that bothered, think about it. Would you be bothered if we weren't here? Because we are constantly aware of how fragile our existence is. So we encourage you to support us in whatever way you can, whether it's by following us on X. Become a core supporter. That's the most important thing you can do. Pay us whatever amount you like, but pay it to us every single month, because that allows us to budget for these projects that are coming up. Anyway, the latest legal challenge is actually at the UK Supreme Court. So I love the fact that, we had something, we had the US Supreme Court and we have the UK Supreme Court. These issues are all going to the highest level. And our Supreme Court challenge is, what is a woman? What's so fabulous is that Scottish lesbians joined with the Lesbian Project and LGBT Alliance with our wonderful barrister, Karen Monaghan. We were called the Lesbian Interveners, which we thought was probably quite a good name for a film or a band. We're waiting for the judgment, but for those of you who watched it on YouTube, or if you haven't watched it, I recommend you watch it. The most interesting parts of the whole hearing were when counsel for the Scottish government explained that a man who gets a gender recognition certificate becomes a lesbian. And there was silence in the court, and the looks on the faces of the judges and the questions. Are you saying that a man can get a certificate, a piece of paper, and he thereby becomes a lesbian if he's attracted to women? And the answer is yes. That is the view of the Scottish government. So if you have a dull afternoon, watch it and look at the judges' faces. This is the insane world we live in. Now, there's a couple of possible outcomes. They may say, yeah, that's right, they are. That's all you need. And the law says that they are women and they are lesbians. But if they do, then clearly the whole thing has got to go back to Parliament, questions over the Gender Recognition Act, questions over the Equality Act, we don't know. But we're very pleased to have intervened in that. We think the intervention was key because it's more dramatic than just saying a man can become a woman. It's much more dramatic to say you now qualify as a lesbian, and lesbians can't exclude you from clubs, societies, anything. We're also involved in a case in the Czech Republic, which is two gay men with an adopted child. One is British, one is Czech, and the adoption is not recognized in the Czech Republic, and we believe it should be. So that's another legal challenge that we're involved with. Another brainwave has come up from the team, Business Forum, LGBT Alliance Business Forum. If anybody on this call is interested, is in business of any kind, or basically if you have a job, have a look at the Business Forum. It's got its own website. Just type in LGBT Alliance Business Forum. It's a whole new angle for us, and it's really important because we know from however many legal challenges there have been, that Stonewall has been giving illegal information to employers for a number of years, because their reading of the Equality Act is that gender identity is a protected characteristic. And from that, which is untrue, they have misled employers across the UK. And constantly, in case after case, we see Stonewall misinformed. You know, it started with Aqua Rheindorf's case at the University of Essex, I think the most recent one. It wasn't the Fife one. I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, the Business Forum is basically an antidote to what used to be a brilliant scheme called Stonewall Diversity Champions, which held the Workplace Equality Index, which was designed to help employers navigate their way through the Equality Act correctly. As soon as Stonewall changed the interpretation of the Equality Act, it's become an absolute menace, and which is why so many workplaces have put in mixed loos, etc., etc., etc. So the Business Forum is actually perfectly timed as well because of what's happening in the US and the spotlight on does DEI enhance the experience of employers and employees, or what is happening. So there's a whole big discussion going on, and we've had good coverage in some of the press about the Business Forum, which is great. This is the thing that we've always said, Bev and I said from the beginning, this is a global struggle. This is not a struggle that you can fight country by country. We stand or fall together. You're a lesbian whether you're in Taiwan, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Colombia. We are the same wherever we live, and we deserve the same. We are lesbians wherever we are. We are gay men, and we must work together. So basically what happened was that despite myths that were propagated that Beverly Jackson was sitting in a basement flat in Amsterdam with 12 different computers with different IP addresses, pretending to be 12 different LGB alliances. That's what the opposition said was happening. But what was actually happening was that groups were forming around the world without us. They aren't all called LGB Alliance. Some of them have different names. Some of them have started and stopped. Some of them have, had a real struggle. And we know how hard it is. We're very, very, very lucky in the UK because LGB Alliance exists within a whole group of different groups that all want to fight against gender identity ideology. Anyway, what we're going to do, what we are in the process of doing, is putting together a kind of federation. We have to fight ILGA, which is the single voice for lesbian, gay, bisexual, TQIA+, at global level. We have to disrupt the narrative. When we formed LGB Alliance in this country, we disrupted the narrative here, just by our name, not by actually saying anything. So internationally, we will be called LGB International, and we will build up a federation of which LGB Alliance will be, at UK will be one member, but there will be a board representing the different countries around the world. And gradually, if we can get sufficient support, we will hope to get a secretariat. We will hope to be present at United Nations events, World Health Organization events, and we will speak up for gays, lesbians, and bisexuals around the world. The 3 top priorities for 2025 are: be the preeminent lesbian, gay, and bisexual rights charity in the United Kingdom. Stonewall is going through a bit of a phase at the moment. It didn't help them to be, when it was made clear that they'd been funded by the State Department for a few £100,000, having accused us of being in receipt of gazillions of dollars from the US. It did enable us to have a rare smile. But they are cutting back on their staff. They have somebody more sensible in charge. Who knows? Who knows what their future is? But we have always tried to act within the law. We represent the law as it is, not as we would like it to be. And we continue to work with politicians and government as effectively as we can to campaign on what we believe is important. So we've got a lot more to do because we're still not allowed on the BBC, not allowed on any public channel except for GB News. We're very rarely reported. We have a very low profile. We have hardly any money. But that is one of our priorities. The other one is what we mentioned before, the ban on cross-sex hormones and surgery, phalloplasty, mastectomies on the National Health Service. Utterly disgraceful, utterly against everything that the NHS was formed for. Conversion therapy ban, our contacts in the Labour Party say there is zero appetite for it. Not surprisingly, because it's a load of absolutely unnecessary nonsense. However, you have got Angela Eagle and various people like that who will continue to try and push for something like that. Big campaign coming up for us, adoption and fostering. I don't know if you knew this, UK people. I didn't know this. There are 100,000 children in care in the United Kingdom. There are no barriers at all for gays, lesbians, and bisexuals to adopt children. None, or foster them. So this is a big campaign coming up for us. It will coincide with what we know Ruth Hunt is doing. This is the former chief executive of Stonewall, who now sits very nicely in the House of Lords. Her favourite issue now is encouraging commercial surrogacy. We think Stonewall will also play in that awful area. Meantime, we will take what we consider to be the high ground and the right thing to do, which is to encourage fostering and adoption in a responsible way. We're sort of repeating here, but we're continuing, we want more attention on a total ban on any medicalisation of young people likely to grow up to be lesbian, gay, and bisexual. And the third campaign may surprise some of you, but we've been getting more and more reports informally, not formally yet. We've got to do more research about chemsex and deaths, especially of young gay men who maybe have to be drugged out of their brains because of all the homophobia that's going on around them. But this is something that we're going to start looking into. The charities that used to look after young gay men and would have taken care of this seem to have sort of given up on all of it. So that's our third campaign. So do have a look at our website. Do come to our conference. Do please, if you can, become a core supporter if you're not already. The advantage of the core supporter from your point of view is that you get advance notice of whatever is coming up, plus news flashes if anything interesting happens. And for us, as I said, the advantage is that it enables us to operate in a planned way rather than lurching from one thing to another. So I just want to thank everybody who already does support us. I know so many of you do. And you know, it's tough for all of us. And without you, we would have gone home a long time ago.